Welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that this meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Limited public seating has been made available, and this has been allocated in such a way that all present are aware of the COVID-secure protocols in place. This meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to view remotely if they so wish. Can I ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting? And some housekeeping information, safety information. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at Queen Victoria's statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign up when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. And may I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Everyone speaking will be on camera. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. Right, we'll do some introductions. If I start with the front row and work my way around. Graham.
I'm Councillor Graham Healy. I'm Labour Group spokesperson on traffic and transportation.
Thank you. Simon?
Councillor Simon Bowsher. I am the Conservative spokesman for traffic and transportation.
Councillor John Smith, Eastern and Craneswater, making a deputation today.
So Linda Symes also making a deputation.
Kevin?
Kevin McKee, parking manager for Portsmouth City Council.
Pam Turton, I'm the Assistant Director for Transport at Portsmouth City Council.
Wayne?
Wayne Layton, I'm a Finance Manager here at Portsmouth City Council.
Nikki?
Nikki Masson, Senior Transport Planner within the parking team.
Thank you. Back row?
My name is Renee Oliver. I'm a resident in Priory Crescent.
Hi, I'm Andy Lever. I'm a resident of Eastern Parade.
Hi, Lisa Gallagher from Democratic Services.
Thank you. Have there been any apologies for absence, Lisa?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Declaration of members' interest. Councillor Bowsher and Councillor Heaney, do you have any interest to declare? Lovely, thank you. So we go on to the first item. I think it's item 3 actually, which is TRO 3/2021. Kevin, are you introducing this?
Yes, I am, Councillor Stagg. Shall I introduce it and then read the deputations, or?
Yes, introduce it and then we'll go to the deputation for the public first, and then we'll have residents, or this is afterwards. Thank you.
Item 3 is a report on the proposed extension of the GB residence parking zone. It proposes to extend the zone into roads set out in Annex 1, Part B, and also to reduce the limited waiting period throughout the zone from 2 hours to 1 hour. There is also a proposal to introduce 3 hours limited waiting around Priory Crescent, around Milton Park on the Priory Crescent east and south sides for GB permit holders, and on Goldsmith Avenue, 3 hours limited waiting and MI permit holders to allow people to still visit the park, but to reserve the space for residents as well. Consultation took place on the proposals between the 6th of July and the 28th of July. The results are shown in Appendix B, and the officer's summary of those results are shown in paragraph 511. And this shows that there is support for the proposals, which is why we're recommending their adoption. Moving on to the deputations. Sorry, do you want to do the deputation from Nick Oliver before I read out the written deputations?
Yes, and who's doing the... Yes, would you like to go ahead now? Can you switch your microphone on?
Sure. So I'm here, I'm standing in for my husband, Nick Oliver. to say that, I and lots of people in our area and our road really do support this. I've lived in Priory Crescent for just over 5 years, and the only thing that's been consistent is it's consistently got worse. Unfortunately, I do think a lot of people are very selfish. They have too many cars. It has become a dumping ground. I understand that, a lot of it is because of other areas been permitted, but it's obviously for the same reason, that there are too many cars in those areas. So I don't really see why that should be an objection, really, because I think it's the same cause. We do have a lot of commercial vehicles. Not only are they big, and sometimes 2 cars could get in that space, I do think it's really dangerous. Sometimes you have a situation where you've got 3 or 4 commercial vehicles parked, young families, you simply can't see round the vehicles when you're trying to cross the road, and it really is a hazard. We have dog walkers, families, and elderly people, they play bowls and that kind of thing, so that's particularly bad. And obviously there are a lot of cars that are just permanently there. They don't seem to move on. They're just, I don't think they're really needed. Some vehicles being there for 6 months, I'm surprised they even start when the people come back to get them. And we also see people pull up and take bicycles out the back of their vehicles and cycle off. And I also think, especially with a lot of things that have been in the media at the moment, quite often you'll come back of an evening, it's particularly bad at the weekends and the evenings, and quite frankly, for women on their own to have to walk quite a fair distance, quite often taking the route across the park, it's really dangerous, especially when you think a lot of those cars are not moving on at any point. So I think there are a lot of reasons why myself and a lot of other residents really support the extension of the GB zone.
Thank you very much. Kevin, do you want to read out the written ones?
Deputation number 1 is from Miss I. I'm unable to attend the decision meeting on Thursday. Sorry. Is that better? Yeah, sorry. Miss I, I'm unable to attend the decision meeting on Thursday, the 7th of October. However, I'd like to make sure that the proposed 3-hour parking in Goldsmith Avenue with exemption for MI permit holders is included alongside the GB parking zone extension, as this was written into TRO 3/2 2021 report, sections 3.6 and 5.5, but is not on the agenda sheet for the meeting. As an MI permit holder living on Goldsmith Avenue, I'm in favour of the proposal to include 3-hour parking limit with MI permit holder exemption on the roads adjacent to Milton Park due to the ongoing parking issues here. I'm deeply concerned that if the proposal for GB parking zone extension goes ahead without including the 3-hour parking with an exemption for MI permit holders, it will exacerbate the already existing parking problems here. Thank you for your time. Deputation 2 from Mr. A. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend the decision meeting. However, I am writing this email to inform you that as a resident of Ruskin Road, I fully support introducing parking permits. Deputation 3 from Ms. W. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend the decision meeting. However, I am writing this email to inform you that as a resident of Ruskin Road, I fully support introducing parking permits. Deputation number 4 from Mr. L. I strongly object to the proposed parking and waiting restrictions for the extension of GB zone. I'm attaching photos that I took during the week from Apsley Road, Ruskin Road and Carisbrook Road and Frogmore Road between 9 and 4 p.m. As you kindly can notice, there are several places available for parking during the working hours when residents go to work. I'm writing today as a small specialist dental practice owner based in Goldsmith Avenue. The proposed zoned parking and waiting restrictions will ruin the business that we've built up over 3 decades. Our patients, who often travel quite a distance to see us, quite often have a dental appointment that is longer than your proposed waiting restriction on the roads local to us, Apsley Road, Ruskin Road and Frogmore Road. As a non-restricted residential area, we have never had any parking problems over the years. As with lots of residential areas, people go out and work during the day, and this makes the roads in the working hours quite easy to park in. And as we do not open in the evenings or weekend, we do not disrupt the local area at busy times when people are wanting to park near their homes. We are a local employee of 10 part-time staff who work different days and hours, and the new restrictions will impact on all of them, as well as all our customers. We would ask you to reassess the need for parking in these roads to be so restricted, just limited to 1 hour waiting, when other surrounding zones such as ME Hazelmere Road, MC Bramble Road, MB Orchard Road, parking zone information, and MI Middlesex Road parking zone information have much more appropriate restrictions in place. If it is necessary to place restrictions on parking locally, then maybe it could be done in a fairer way to help residents as well as local businesses get what they need. And deputation number 5 from Mr. G. I'm writing to completely object to the parking zone restrictions. I run a sports massage business above City Garage on Goldsmith Avenue, and I myself and my clients park in this area. This will lose me a lot of business as well as a lot of other people. There is always parking in the area, either on Goldsmiths Avenue, Ruskin Road, Frogmore Road, etc. So there's no reason to have this enforced, especially for 1 hour no return. It's just making business lives difficult for little reason. This area has always been good for parking and does not need restrictions. I'd be more concerned about the traffic build-up and pollution with cars sat waiting for the lights to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Bosher, any comments, questions?
Thank you, Councillor Stagg. A couple of the businesses there have expressed their concerns that by changing the limits from 2 hours down to 1 hour, that it's obviously going to impact on their businesses. Kevin, could you just give me some background as to why that has changed as well?
We're proposing to reduce it from 2 hours to 1 hour in response to residents' requests because of parking in the area for more than 1 hour, particularly during the football.
So that's the football when there's, 19 home games a season. Some of them are in the evenings, not all of them are on Saturdays. So the evening kick-offs will be outside of these businesses' working hours.
Yes, but there's also provision for the 3 hour limited wait around Milton Park. We're allowing for people that need to come to the businesses as well. It's slightly further away than it would be, so it's creating that balance between what the residents need while still trying to support the businesses.
Doesn't seem to support the businesses.
Can I come in before you go on, Councillor Bosher? I'm just wondering whether we have done it, I know, with some of the doctor's surgeries. Is it possible to have business permits with no registration number on it so that they can actually be used for people, clients, etc.? Nikki, you've got to reply to that, have you?
Yes, you're right that in response to the dental practice concerns, we do issue business permits that don't have a registration number on, so they are transferable. So they wouldn't necessarily need 10 parking permits. Obviously, what the businesses are saying sort of contradicts what the residents have told us, and the reasons why they're supporting the scheme is that they do have difficulty parking. But these businesses, so the dental practice, is adjacent to Ruskin Road, Frogmore Road, and there's no parking zone there at the moment. It's not to do with reducing the 2-hour free parking. Those roads are unrestricted. So if their customers can't park in those roads at the moment, if 1 hour won't be long enough, then as Kevin mentioned, the proposal also includes 3 hours around Milton Park. As the resident mentioned, at the minute, no one can use that parking because it's been used for long-term parking, commercial vehicles. So this proposal aims to manage that a bit better, introduce the 3-hour limited wait, which means cars won't be left for months on end. And that will be available for residents, for visitors, and for customers to local businesses. The other employer that's mentioned, the other business on Goldsmith Avenue is on the south side, and that actually backs onto the ME parking zone. So they can park there for 22 hours a day, unrestricted. So they're looking across the road at the free parking at the moment that we're proposing to introduce residents parking.
Thank you, Nikki. Simon, do you want to go on?
It sounds like the business is just going to have to manage their customer base, which is probably what they envisaged. The other question I've got, Kevin mentioned the football club. This extension, is this to do with the football match parking and managing it better, or is it more to do with the fact that with the introduction of the MI zone in 2020, we now have displacement vehicles in the area?
I think it's the latter, because we've previously surveyed GB and residents haven't wanted the extension, but since the introduction of other parking zones around, they do.
Right, so it's more to do with displacement parking as opposed to the football. Just wanted to understand that. Thanks, Kevin.
Councillor Heaney.
Yeah, thank you. I went and had a walk around the area a few weeks ago, I think, before the briefing meeting, and then posed some questions at that meeting about the way the parking would work, and got my head around how the football parking works. It's not all of the roads that are excluded, it's just certain ones. And actually I ended up talking to a couple of residents while I was on my sort of travels around that morning, and obviously completely unrepresented, but they were very keen to support it. I've obviously picked up what the businesses have said, and Simon's obviously picked up on it too. I suppose the question is whether we can allow them to have some permit access to be able to park for their customers or their patients if it's a surgery. And if we can do that, and if it's not going to be too costly for them, then obviously that is one solution. I suppose again it's a question of monitoring what happens, and I'm hoping that I don't think we've got a formal monitoring recommendation here, but I hope that the businesses and the people who've put deputation will be willing to come back and tell us how it works, because I mean that's the key. If people don't tell us how it's working and if there are problems, it won't get picked up. So I hope we'll be able to do that, and I'm sure the ward councillors will be alert to the potential of that and pick that up. So,
thank you. I would like as well if we could talk to the businesses concerned, see if we can work something out with them rather than just flatly refuse.
Yes, I think these two deputations came in quite late. So
right, yes,
we've only seen them in the last few hours.
Nikki, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just same thing, that we've only just seen these deputations, so obviously we haven't had a chance to respond yet, letting them know what's in place to help.
Well, I lived just across the road for 20 years from 1983, and it was bad then, parking, so it's obviously got worse. So I don't think, and wasn't just because of football, but yes. So I think as long as we do talk with those two businesses, I think you're right, Councillor Bosher. We need to sort of try and work out something that's helpful for everybody. But otherwise, I think I would support it because I know the problem is just horrendous there. Councillor Bosher.
Thanks for your indulgence, Lynn. Currently, as I understand it, though, there isn't a process by which visitors to a business, because that's essentially what they are, have dispensation, because it will be no different to any shop or other business in any other residence parking zone. Essentially, what we cater for are business permits for the employees, isn't it? And as much as the employees can or possibly manage a business permit system between them, they are essentially going to lose business if it becomes a complete pain for actually being able to actually go and access a dentist in this particular instance, or one of them, and may well have treatment that lasts longer than an hour and come out and find they've got themselves a parking ticket because they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think engagement with the business is right, but I can't see that we've got any solution that you can apply to one or two businesses in one zone that shouldn't be applicable to businesses across the whole of Southsea. Unfortunately, these businesses are going to suffer as a result of displacement, not football traffic, because they've existed there with the club, working throughout hours that don't coincide with football traffic, because it's either going to be a Saturday, they said they don't open Saturday, or it's going to be evening matches, which traditionally kick off at 7:30, 7:45, that sort of time, and so they're not coinciding with them. So I'll be interested to see the feedback, and hopefully the feedback can be made available to both Graham and myself so that we can see it. But I don't easily see what the solution is, because you can't apply one thing for one business if you don't make it available for everybody. And that somewhat defeats the object.
Permits, are they available? No?
No, but we could look at putting in limited number of limited weight bays at different places, which is what we've done with other businesses. But we need, as I say, the deputations have come in today, I believe, so we haven't really had an opportunity.
Sorry, Lynn. Kevin, you're talking about now putting in some limited weight, potentially, on reflection with these businesses. If you do that, if Lynn approves this, and this goes in against TROs, and then you want to fiddle around with some bits to make it a little bit better, aren't you going to have to go down yet another TRO route to actually do that?
Yes, it will, but we do ad hoc changes to TROs all the time. What we've got is the programme for zones, which are big projects. But I'm not saying that because, as Nicky said, one of the businesses has an M zone area behind, and the parking's unrestricted for 22 hours. We will contact the businesses and talk to them, but one option is making minor changes to bays.
Sorry, Lynn. I totally hear what the deputations and the lady at the back says, and I totally get where they're coming from, because they've been victims of what is essentially the MI zone here. My issue is, and perhaps it's the phrase that I like to adopt, either simple Simon, because that's me, or keep it simple stupid. But if we keep tweaking it with TRO after TRO because we're putting something in and it doesn't quite work, so let's do another TRO, that doesn't quite work, and we keep doing it, all you're going to get left with is complete and utter confusion. And I would suggest you need to get this right in one TRO so that you know exactly where you are, rather than fiddle and constantly doing bit and bit and bit and bit.
But I was going to say that actually meeting with the businesses doesn't necessarily mean giving them anything special, but working with them to see how they can work out their business, their clientele, and etc. So. Yes. Nikki.
Yeah, I think we're just trying to be a bit reassuring to say that if something does come up after a zone's in place, in response to feedback, because obviously you don't always have. People don't always know what to expect until a scheme's put in. So Kevin said that in the past, yes, we've made some tweaks and we've brought some back here, some just haven't had any objections. So it is possible to make adjustments, but at this time we can't guess what might be needed, if anything. So it will be in response, as you say, to feedback, which we take very seriously. And then we'll see if any specific measures would be needed to that specific feedback. And can I just say as well that it's not just football and displacement. In paragraph 5.3 of the report, we've listed 7 factors that residents give for the parking problems. But I think, as you say, we can't. There's a lot of permits that are issued. There's a lot of exemptions. So as I say, we've got the 1 hour limited wait for non-residents. There's a 3 hour limited wait, and there's nearby, and there's a 22-hour free parking. So all of those can be used by customers and clients who travel to the dentist by car. So these are the people that would be affected. Not everyone goes to the dentist by car. We're only talking about those that drive there and are wishing to park. And with all these measures, we're always trying to encourage people to think about how they could get somewhere by a different method of travelling. I was used to cycle to the dentist and end up a sweaty mess by the time I got there. Other times I got people to drop me off. So it's not all their clients. It's only people that expect to drive there and park for however long they need to. There is provision for them in the area. They might have to look a bit harder, but it is there. And I hope that answers your question.
I think it's important, Simon, to particularly as these have just come in. Just as these specific ones have come in, I think it's important that we listen to the people and talk to them if possible. If they'd come in earlier, officers could have done that beforehand. But I think let's talk to them and then come back if necessary afterwards. So, Graham.
Just come back a quick one. It's obviously unfortunate they've come in so late and we haven't been able to consider that because since I don't live in the area or work in the area, I wouldn't necessarily be aware that was the nature of the problem. I think the other thing is, I'm wondering to what extent we should be a bit more proactive in going to the businesses in the area, telling them that we are going to do this, because although this is a residence parking zone, if there is a business located in there, it's really important that they are told what is happening so that they can respond in time. I mean, I don't know when they found out about this, maybe they only found out late. I don't know, but I hope we are being proactive in going to businesses in there and telling them what's happening.
They do get letters, don't they? All businesses, because I know we suspended quite a bit during lockdown because businesses weren't weren't open. So in order for them to have their say, we didn't go ahead with quite a few of them. Nikki?
Yes, you're right. This is why this has been delayed for so long, because we did actually survey them last year. And then we had to delay the formal consultation because if business premises are closed, then someone might not be picking up the post. So we waited until the COVID restrictions were eased. And yes, we send copies of the proposal to every property in an area. We don't distinguish whether it's residential, business or other.
My other point was really just to say that
Thank you, Nikki.
at the risk of making it complicated, I suppose we need to maybe to consider whether we should think about restrictions at times when the residents are. So, for example, we're talking about long-term parking in Goldsmith Avenue. Yes, it's certainly a problem, but maybe we would consider restricting it so that it doesn't happen all week, so allow other people to park. There are sort of different ways you can do these things, it seems. And I know in London they have different ways of dealing with the restrictions to have a freer time when residents are less likely to be inconvenienced and restrictions when residents are likely to be worried about it. So I don't know. It's always you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis, but that risks complicating the sort of zones you have and I recognise, of course, also, and I recognise, of course, that we're adding to an existing zone, so you don't want to have an extra complicated set of proposals in adjacent roads, which makes it confusing. So I do recognise the problem, but maybe we can.
But I think other people's ideas to be fed in. I mean, perhaps we can set up a meeting at some point and get your ideas and see how the response from Nikki's the one who does all of these things, so she knows it inside out, so she can feed back to you.
Yeah,
Nikki, you were going to reply to something,
yeah,
yes?
Just to confirm, I think Councillor Heaney hit the nail on the head there. It's because it's an extension to existing zone, so the existing restrictions operate 24 hours a day because that's what the residents needed at the time. We do have zones that operate daytime only, 8 till 6. They're usually tailored to the area, but because this is an extension of an existing zone and there was no appetite for those residents to change their zone, it's an extension.
Yes, Simon. Finally.
just a couple of points, because I think you're going to improve this anyway, but when we sort of do we actually proactively engage with the businesses? Because sometimes when these consultations go out, you make a decision based on who's the majority vote, in theory. And if the businesses sit in the minority, are we actually trying to engage and find out what the issues actually are? Because if we were to go back and, let's say, resurvey this area, I suspect the majority will still be let's keep it, and the minority, which probably might include these two businesses, will sort of get lost again because they're not in the right stack of numbers. So it'd be interesting, as Graham said, to proactively engage with these businesses and make an understanding. And perhaps I'm going to get shot down for what seems like a pretty simple question, but when we send out the letters and they go through businesses' front doors, are they specifically addressed to the business or to something that is generic? Because if they are rented properties, it may well be that the business is putting it to one side and not responding because they assume it is going to be the landlord, for the benefit of the landlord, who may not even live in the area and be completely indifferent to something like that.
Nikki?
Yeah, they are addressed to the resident stroke business. But as you say, we can't be responsible for who picks up the post. So although it's their open documentation, it's not an envelope. So whoever picks up the post will see how the business could be affected. And obviously we do get a lot of responses from businesses. I say we've got over 40 parking zones in place in the city, and there are hundreds of businesses involved in all of them. And I think the only time they object is if, or ask for changes, is if their customers say there's an issue. And as a driver, it's really up to you to find somewhere to park. But if they do complain to the business and say it's more difficult for us to get to you, that's fed back to us. And as you know, we do listen to all feedback that we receive.
I think we've got to remember as well, Simon, the officers have got limited time. They're supposed to be, 37 and a half hours a week? And I know that many of the officers, particularly over the pandemic, have been working 50 plus hours per week. So there's only so much time, if even if you're office-based or if you're home-based, to do things. So I think they go as far as they possibly can in the time available. But, right, I think we leave it there, and I would ask that we, not consult, but engage with those two businesses and see if we can help in any way or if they can address their own issues. And I'm happy to accept the recommendations. Thank you. And we go on to the next one now, and I think it's you again, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So shall I do the same thing? I'll introduce the report and then move on to deputations.
Sorry?
Shall I introduce the report and then move on to the deputations? And so, yeah, this is item 4. It's a report on two proposals for Eastern Parade and St Helens Parade. The first proposal is to introduce a pedestrian crossing between the junctions of Helena and Bruce Roads, with changes to the parking restrictions on the north side to accommodate it. And the second proposal is to introduce limited weighted parking on the south side for a maximum stay of 3 hours, together with the ability for the businesses to obtain business permits. With regard to the crossing, we're proposing a zebra crossing to provide a safe crossing point across what is a busy A road, and so that people can get across to the common and the amenities. This supports the council's objective of promoting walking. The footfall in the area clearly varies according to weather conditions because the seafront's the draw. During the summer of 2020, a temporary crossing in the area where the current crossing is proposed proved successful. The benefit of the crossing is that, the benefit of having a zebra crossing is that it'll only stop the traffic when people want to cross. So at times when it's not busy, the traffic will be free-flowing. The arrangement of the crossing is shown in Appendix A. The crossing requires the removal of 17 metres of residents parking on the north side, which is equivalent to about 3 parked cars, and the removal of 10 metres of double yellow line. The zigzag marking on the south side will mirror that on the north and extend across what is the current drop curb access to the path, which doesn't currently have any parking on it, but part of that zigzag will take out some unrestricted parking on the south side, and we estimate that's around 5 parking spaces. Over 600 properties in the area were sent the proposal. The response has been mixed and is set out in Appendix C. There are slightly more in favour of the idea of a crossing than those against it. We've summarised our assessment of the responses in paragraph 5.6. There are differing views as to the most suitable location, but for the reasons set out in the report, we're recommending that it is between Helena Road and Bruce Road. With regard to the parking, the 3-hour limited wait proposed on the south side between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. will produce a turnover of space and make more parking available for visitors. I drove along it this morning, and there were virtually no spaces on the south side that anybody could have used, but a considerable amount of parking on the north side where you've got protected parking through the RPZs. By creating more available parking on the south side, visitors are likely to use that space, and fewer are likely to look for space within the RPZs. However, in order to enable the businesses to have essential staff, we've proposed providing them with the ability to buy business permits. We did an informal survey of the businesses before coming up with this proposal, and that survey suggested that there were currently around 33 of their staff, that's from all the businesses that are driving, but the impact of it's likely to be less because all 33 of those staff won't be working at the same time. Some may decide not to drive because the business will need to pay for the permits. The 33 are split between 2 zones because some of the businesses are opposite one zone and some opposite another. And a number of the businesses are shut at weekends and after 6 in the evening. So you won't get the staff parking after the business is shut. So for those reasons, we've made the recommendations in the report to introduce both the crossing and the changes to the parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Are you going to read the objections first?
Do you want the deputations from...
That's what I mean.
The in-person deputations first?
Deputations first, yes. Should we have the written ones first?
Okay.
Or would you... Hang on a minute. Councillor Symes, would you prefer to go? Okay, fine. Yeah, the written ones first.
Okay, thank you. Written deputations, first one's from Mr H. The report underlines my conviction that public consultation has been a sham and never any intention to consider the views expressed that might have opposed the proposal. The Council publishes a proposal without any evidence to support it. When questions are raised in consultation process about traffic surveys which supported the proposal, it hurriedly undertakes some. Even then, the data does not justify the installation of a crossing under the Department of Transport's guidelines, but let not the facts inconvenience nor influence the process. We can ignore the survey data because it rained one day and the sun was not shining on the other day, so we can infer the threshold of the crossing is met. What did the traffic surveys show for St Helens Parade Festing Road location, assuming any have been undertaken? Statements are made about the success of the temporary crossing that was installed in 2020 without any data to support them. What criteria were used to reach this conclusion? This also ignores the different situation which prevailed at the time because the closure of the seafront road. It is irrelevant to this proposal, but is another example of the Council trying to bolster the case without any justification. It is evident from the report and consultation responses that the need for a crossing is greater on St Helens Parade, yet the Council seems determined to ignore this. If the Council were acting responsibly, it would undertake a proper process and identify where the need is greatest, not on a whim as it seems to be the case with this proposal, and then work towards funding and implementing that solution at the earliest opportunity. Rather than waste £50,000, why not save the money to enable the necessary remodelling of the junction where most people walk to the seafront, i.e. west of Festing Road, St Helens Parade Junction? The proposed changes to the parking restrictions on the south side of Eastern Parade and St Helens Parade are also ill thought out. I fully support the need to prevent long-term parking, but do not feel the unintended consequences of these proposals have been addressed. Firstly, potentially there will be 33 additional residence parking permits issued. The assertion that this will have minimal effect on the residence parking zones is optimistic at best. It is the equivalent of nearly all the residence parking spaces in Helier Road. Secondly, it will still be possible to park in the newly restricted zone for up to 20 hours between 3 p.m. and 11 a.m. the next day. I would urge that if this proposal were implemented, that the residence parking holders are exempt from the 3-hour restriction, as is common in other parts of the city. And the second written deputation from Mr. S. I and my neighbours are totally against this crossing and believe it not necessary. The council document for this proposal states that when a pedestrian crossing was put in place there before, it was well used. This is false information. It was only used because the council closed the seafront road, causing all the traffic to be diverted down Eastern Parade. This closure resulted in Eastern Parade being turned into a dangerous motorway. With the seafront road now open, the problems of crossing Eastern Parade have disappeared. Implementing a crossing will cause cars to wait at the crossing with their engines idling and cause more pollution and noise. This is unfair on the residents living in the flats opposite the proposed crossing. This would also affect adversely the enjoyment of communal gardens in front of their properties. This proposal is not the best interest of local residents. I would like this letter to be read out at the Traffic and Transportation meeting on the 7th of October. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Symes. Can you put your mic on, please? Thank you.
Hi. Firstly, thank you for allowing me to make representation at this meeting. The change to parking restrictions on the south side of Eastern Parade and St Helens Parade is broadly welcomed by residents and businesses, and as it was the only area left in the vicinity that had no parking restrictions, so vehicles were left there for long periods of time without moving. Helena Road crossing, however, has been contentious. As opposition councillors, we have no say on how money is spent in the city, as those decisions are made by the Lib Dem cabinet. What we do have, however, is money that comes to the ward to offset the impact of any new development. This money can only be allocated by the councillors. So we were surprised to receive an email from an officer at the council on June the 8th, 2021, informing us that a new crossing had been proposed at the junction of Helena Road, and some of our SIL money was to be used to top up the 50,000 already available from the local transport fund. We had never agreed to this. The second surprise was the plan was to be implemented by the end of July, just 5 weeks later. The letter went on to say it was deemed necessary from data taken in 2020, when we all know Clarence Esplanade was closed. The letter finished by saying that this plan had the agreement of both Gerald Fallon Jackson and Lynn Stagg, council leader and portfolio holder for traffic and transport. One resident contacted me to ask, was this why Gerald was having photos taken in the location of the new proposed crossing earlier on in the year? If that's the case, why weren't we told about the plans then? When we responded to say, had residents been consulted, there was a shuffling of feet and a response that said letters would be delivered to most of the area, but the doors in Helena Road and Eastern Parade will be knocked by a representative of the council. Although we asked for a copy of this letter and the script for those knocking on doors before it was sent out, we have to date received nothing. We did put out our own survey to the area closest to the proposal, and of those responses we received, over 90% opposed the location of the crossing. A lot said it was only when the temporary crossings were in place that an accident occurred. The reason in the report given for putting this crossing in this location was, one, it connected with a path going past the tennis pavilion and through the rose gardens directly onto the seafront. As the rose gardens are locked at 6 to 7 all year round, anyone wanting to stroll down to the seafront in the evening using that route would not be able to do so. As most of the area is now covered by an RPZ, visitor numbers parking in that area have depleted, and residents from the east cross the road when exiting the street they live on. Those coming from the west of the crossing cross opposite Canoe Lake from St Helens Parade. To use the Helena Road crossing, they would have to cross another road which is even busier than Eastern Parade, Festing Road, to get there. 3, the report also says this would link up with crossings in Albert Road to access the seafront. That doesn't work, as there is no crossing in Festing Road. This scheme needs to go back to the drawing board and accurate data needs to be collected, as 2020 was an exceptional year that saw between 800 and 900 cars using Eastern Parade every hour, and there was no resident parking scheme in place. The only other reason this makes sense is if the council has plans to close Clarence Esplanade in the long term, which would be to the great detriment of the residents and those who love driving along or visiting the seafront by car. Some would say there is a park and ride bus for visitors to use, but as that terminates at the D-Day Museum, it's about as much use as a chocolate teapot to those wanting to visit the eastern end of the beach. I do hope you will reconsider these plans and find an outcome that is safer and more accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you for your time today to talk about the crossing on Eastern Parade. I'm objecting to the crossing because the need for it grew out of the closure of the seafront road during lockdown and the associated traffic movements and figures to justify a permanent crossing were also established at this time while the seafront road was shut. Surely any data or statistics used to make justification for a crossing should have been taken with both roads open. Parking restrictions were also not in place at the time of data being recorded, which would also have a bearing on traffic movements and results. Diverting traffic along Eastern Parade made it at best a very busy highway and in turn a very unpleasant and congested area, particularly at peak season for both people on foot and in cars. At this time, 2 temporary crossings were hurriedly installed at a cost of 40k plus in an attempt to rectify the congestion issues caused by the road closure. With the seafront road now open, the associated problems and issues with crossing Eastern Parade have disappeared. To implement this crossing on misleading data and from my correspondence with residents, no need for a crossing. Also, where these residents feel they will experience more pollution and noise from cars waiting and ticking over at said crossing, and the impact this setup will have on the gardens and properties nearby is wrong. Residents I spoke with said they do not see this as in the best interests of local residents or indeed visitors and businesses who will in addition lose further parking spaces as a result of the changes. Other questions I hope you can help me understand include the consultation was clearly hurried, as we see from the officer correspondence with ward councillors. Why? As Councillor Symes just said. Ward councillors only found out about the crossing proposal when officers were wanting a seal contribution towards the crossing. Where has the extra monies come from? 3, it was stated there was going to be a doorstep survey in the impacted area. Why has this not taken place? And finally, why was the crossing and parking restrictions and the traffic order combined? Surely they can stand separately. Or was it because there was a hope that one would go through on the back of the other? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillors Heaney and Bosher, would you like to answer either Kevin or Nikki some of the questions about consultation, etc.?
Councillor Stagg, I believe we've got a public deputation, Mr. Lever, still to speak.
I'm terribly sorry. Yes, would you like to carry on?
Yeah,
My
sure.
apologies.
No worries. Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm sure like many you see St Helens and Eastern Parade as busy A roads, but I'm here today as part of a very active community of residents and businesses that care deeply about this area. I'm here both as a resident and to represent the views of many of the residents and businesses whom I've talked at length around the ongoing parking abuse on Eastern Parade. It's now been 9 months since the MF parking zone was introduced, which many of us supported, but at the same time asked repeatedly what would happen with the south side of the road. It was clearly obvious that leaving the road as is would attract chronic parking abuse. We received no replies to our questions. During the COVID lockdowns, the seafront was vital for both people's physical and mental well-being, offering an escape during these difficult and testing times. And then when the restrictions eased and the businesses reopened, people wanted to use the cafes, cricket and tennis clubs and attractions. But parking was limited to non-existent due to people abusing the parking spaces. This was totally unfair to the people of Portsmouth. We, the residents, have monitored the parked vehicles on the road and have seen that on an average day, up to a third of vehicles do not move. And at the weekend, it's even worse, with up to half the vehicles not moving for the entirety of the weekend. To make matters worse, these are typically larger commercial vehicles which take the space of 2+ cars and large motorhomes. Is my sound okay, by the way? Yeah, okay, great. The record has been one van which did not move for 9 months, and many others which have been left for months on end. Some were left with gas bottles inside as a potential fire and explosion hazard right on our doorsteps. Other vans are left for months with rubbish clearance in open-backed vehicles getting blown away and littering the street. There is one high-top van sat outside the tennis club which is now famous for being sat for months with all of its tyres flat. Even today when I walked this morning, a quick look at the road showed that less than half of the parking was available. I talked to many people dumping their vehicles and get many reasons for leaving their vehicles, but for many it's free storage or not wanting to purchase a parking permit. In fact, I've talked to people who run their own business from the road, storing vans here, which they drive to each day and leave for the entire weekend. The parking abuse is selfish and has frustrated and angered many of the business owners, many of whom have seen customer parking vastly reduced, or in some cases vehicles completely blocking the ability to get building works completed. They have been powerless to get vehicles moved. This has all been happening when people are desperate to access the seafront and its businesses, and in turn the businesses have been desperate to welcome customers back. It's been crazy that so much parking has been wasted and continues to be wasted as the pandemic continues. The seafront needs and relies upon a constant stream of visitors. It's essential to have a constant turnover and flow of parking spaces. To the Council's credit, they did survey the businesses to see what preference they had for solving the problem, be it parking meters, limited waiting, or to make it part of the MF parking zone. Firstly, I think this survey should have included the residents, but I believe the results of limited waiting has broad support. Fair and regular free access to spaces with the 3-hour limit gives anyone enough time to exercise, walk the dog, visit a cafe, or play a game of tennis. However, there are questions around how this can and will be enforced. Many of the drivers I speak to don't believe the council are effective at enforcing limited waiting zones. And I must say I rarely see traffic wardens on the road on a Saturday and never on a Sunday, the 2 days where parking is at its most precious. For limited waiting to work, I believe it has to be enforced, and if it can't be enforced, then meters need to be the next step, which would also help the city in this tough funding period. As an aside, Portsmouth is the only major South Coast city where you can drive any size vehicle with any polluting engine to the seafront for free, park as long as you want for free, use the beach for free, the toilets and showers for free, and leave your rubbish for free. Also, we residents strongly suggest that the signage needs to be much clearer on the road re vehicle weight limits and overnight sleeping. Many people I've talked to know the road as a free overnight rest stop or a waiting spot for the ferries, and this is never checked. Sleeping on the road is not permitted and needs to be enforced. Also, the weight limit on the road is not enforced. I strongly suggest it should be reduced to 2.45 tonnes, which is common in other seafront towns, for example, Brighton. The vans today are taking the space of multiple cars and are often the high-top versions which restrict and crowd the road. As a side issue, we've noted that so many of the vans are not Euro 5 onward emission compliant. In fact, many are the worst polluters in a city which already has a pollution problem. To conclude, these parking restrictions cannot come soon enough for the businesses and residents and need to be implemented as soon as possible. It's a shame that it's taken this long and so much parking abuse has already occurred in these tough COVID times. Let's ensure that moving forward the parking is fair and turns over regularly to give all visitors fair access to our seafront. I think it's already been noted, but there was a strong feeling also that the TRO combined the crossing with the parking and people felt that they should have been separate. I think broad support for the parking across all the residents to be implemented straight away, and it's clear that there's a lot of questions, particularly from people close to the crossing around the location and timing of the crossing. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, can you answer some of the questions or comments that have been made?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
First of all, in terms of consultation and the timing of the proposals, we were obviously looking at a crossing, and we were also looking at the parking problems. It's also in the programme for the PFI contract to redo the surface of the road this autumn. And for those reasons, it seemed sensible to combine and try and get them all in, because putting a crossing in earlier and then having the road resurfaced wouldn't have been a good use of council taxpayers' money. I also think if we'd separated out the consultation and done one on the parking and one on the crossing, it would have lengthened the time that it took, and people may get confused between the two proposals. So, but it's not an attempt to piggyback one on the other, because Councillor Stagg can accept some of the recommendations and not the others. So the recommendations are open in that respect. So yeah, when we decided to combine them, we did it under the TRO process, which, as we've explained in the earlier report, is to send out the letters to people. I think we sent them out to over 600 properties in the area. That's businesses and residents, and have gathered in their responses and presented them in a report that everybody can see, along with the data that we have. I think one of the issues about the use of the crossing and the need for the crossing is it is seasonal, isn't it? Because on a hot summer day we'll have a lot more people going to the seafront than we do on more cloudy days. But I think the fact that we're recommending a zebra crossing means that the traffic will only stop when people need to cross the road. It's not, I think there's some confusion from some of the respondents that they think it's a signalised junction or that it'll work on a timed basis. It's not. It's activated when needed by people standing there waiting to cross. And I think the fundamental point is there is no safe place to cross that busy road and get to the amenity. And although people are suggesting other places, we've looked at them, and as the report says, the crossing point at Festing Road has a small traffic island. It can accommodate about 2 people safely, and if you get more than that, you've got a problem. If we wanted to introduce it at that point, we would have to do extensive work on the junction and traffic lights, whereas just a short distance around the corner, the position we proposed seems a lot more appropriate. So I don't know, there was a question about the money. I don't know whether Wayne wants to pick that up.
Thank you, Kevin. Wayne?
Yeah, so the crossing is being paid for out as part of the LTP programme. The programme's funded by lots of different sources, corporate resources. Some of that might be SIL, some of it might be the Parking Reserve, some are on ring-fence grants. Sitting here today, I don't know the detail of it being funded by SIL, but I'm happy to go away and have a look at it and come back to you. Yeah, I thought. Yeah, I didn't think it would be, but I can check it. But it's part of the LTP programme. It's in the approved capital programme.
I think it's usual for board councillors to be asked if they want to contribute still money. Yeah. Yeah. Nikki, have you got anything to add, or shall I? No? Yes?
Well, only that my colleague Alison has done a lot of informal engagement on this.
I'm sorry, Alison. I'll automatically go to Nikki because she is the queen of TROs. So
I can claim credit for drafting the TRO, but not for all the informal
Alison,
engagement.
have you got any bits to add? Pardon? In that case, I go to Councillor Heaney.
Thank you. Well, it seems there are 2 issues with this report. One is the parking restrictions, and the other is the zebra crossing. I have to say, in my experience of being a councillor, it's very rare to find councillors saying they are concerned and opposed to a zebra crossing. So I obviously listened quite carefully to what they both said, and it does seem, from their account of things, that the consultation with the ward councillors on this was, to say the least, a bit ham-fisted. I mean, I would have thought that there would have been a bit more concern about making sure the local councillors knew exactly what was being proposed and why anyone, again, it's probably possibly cock up more than conspiracy, should assume that their members would agree to money taken out of sewer fund when it's something that is a sort of a normal traffic issue about providing, because it does seem to be, something they shouldn't be doing really. So I think that also didn't help the situation. And also, it does appear some concerns about the residents. I mean, I suppose the only saving grace about this, there is a recommendation which says that the operation of zebra crossing is monitored to ensure the crossing remains appropriate for the area and the needs of residents. But of course, we would have to spend the cost of putting it in, and then of course, if it doesn't work, we'd have to maybe consider taking it out. It is only a zebra crossing, so it's not like lights in the electric reserve. But as I'm not part of the administration, I'll have to leave the cabinet member to answer for those issues in relation to how it was dealt with. In relation to the parking restrictions, I did go down to the South Sea Cafe and have a look over the summer and have a chat with the owner there about what the issues were, and she shared some correspondence with me and with some of the ward councillors, although of course it's not my ward, but it is fairly close to, and because I'm the Traffic and Transportation Director for the Labour Group, I obviously thought I should take an interest in what they were saying. And the issue of business permits was asked about. At that time I didn't know what was being proposed, so obviously the report then came, and I've obviously seen what is proposed now. And there were two things that occurred to me really. One was the idea that the business owners, staff and owners should actually use the residence parking zone seems in a sense logical, but why wouldn't it be possible for them to park in the restricted parking area too, because that's right adjacent to their businesses? And admittedly, of course, it would take a space that could be used by visitors, but they are businesses and they are there, and some of the staff are not there all of the time, some work sort of shifts. So I was wondering whether maybe to relieve the potential pressure on the residence parking zones, which is obviously a bit of a concern, whether it would be possible to give the business owners the opportunity to park in the limited parking zone on the south side of Eastern Parade as a possibility. That's just a thought that occurred to me, and I'll leave you to come back on that maybe in a moment. The other thing that was raised was the owner of the cafe was talking about the lack of ability to have off-street parking, that they don't appear to have that. And I'm assuming that the cafe is leased and the land is actually owned by the City Council. I don't know the detail because we didn't have a chance to go into the detail because she was very busy and I hadn't a chance to look at it. But that was one of the things that they were suggesting, that if the business were able to create some off-street parking, that would help. But of course, if it's leased and it's not owned by them, they don't have the facility to do it, and they may not have the money to do it. So that's another potential issue. So I don't know whether that's something that could be explored with them if they wish to take that up. So those were the only other slight sort of minor problem is on paragraph 512, where it talks about the informal survey of businesses. I suspect the poor person who was writing this must have doing it late at night after a hard day, because it doesn't entirely read very clearly. It says the informal survey of the businesses and organisations identified that a maximum number of business permits that around 33 members of staff drive to work. Well, it doesn't actually say how many business permits you might have, it just assumes that they're all 33 will, but it says they don't. And the second bit, it talks about the businesses having correspondences. I think they mean correspond, but obviously someone had a busy, hard day, so I won't labour that too much.
Councillor Bosher.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stagg. I'm always mindful of the fact that Pam Turton always looks at me in a withered way when I switch my microphone on. I wonder why that might be. Can I start off with perhaps a very simplistic, rather stupid technical question? 5.4, the crossing will not produce sound. How then, if you are visually impaired, do you know when the crossing is available for you to actually cross if you don't have some sort of audible sound to tell you that you're able to cross at the crossing?
Do you mean, for example, it's a blind person or, but yes?
If it's a zebra crossing, cars are supposed to stop when people actually stand by it, like you do an ordinary zebra crossing, don't you? And I've seen people Yeah,
Sorry,
if it's a zebra crossing, I mean, the rule is you don't just step onto it, you wait there, the cars are supposed to stop when you're ready to cross, and you cross. And that's what normally happens.
Simon's point is, if you're visually impaired, how would you know the cars have stopped?
Well,
I think
people have guide
you meant,
dogs
Simon?
and things.
Yeah, but all right, we'll move on. If it's not being funded, because obviously we've heard rather worrying comment by two of the deputations that they were instructed that SIL money was going to use to finance that, which sort of leaves me with a bit of a worrying thing anyway, if that is correct, and I've got no reason to doubt that. Is this crossing fully funded now without SIL money? It is. I'm getting that nod. Fair enough. The eloquent deputy from the gentleman at the back was talking about the weight limit on this particular road, reducing it from where it is now. Can that actually be done? Because I think this is a designated A road, isn't it?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
Kevin,
I'd have to look into it. I think you might be right about the A road.
Well, I am right about the A road because we had this as a notice of motion that came to full council.
It's
so
definitely an A road.
so it's definitely
Oh,
an A
no,
road.
sorry, I mean, you might be right about it being not being able to restrict the weight on an A road.
So we're
But
stuck.
I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check. I'm not the network.
But there are a couple of things. We start to look at the consultation and the reasons why this crossing has actually gone forward. You mentioned, Kevin, about the 30 the respondees. 23 were in support, 27 objected, and 7 thought it was in the wrong location. Well, to my mind, that's 23 support and 34 object, because the TRO tells you where the crossing is going to go. So therefore, to follow your normal pattern, Councillor Stagg, you'd be rejecting that part of it because the majority seem to be against it. But what really bothers me about this is the evidence that this has been based on. It's effectively been based on the fact that the seafront road was actually closed. This, as I said, is the designated A road and was a diversion for traffic. So therefore, during the pandemic, the period where the seafront was actually closed, this became the route of choice for a lot of traffic going down to the seafront. And I gather there was an accident there during the lockdown period. What's the history of accidents in the years before that? Do we know that? Because I suspect the answer is probably 0.
I have no idea. Does anybody else?
I don't have that data, I'm afraid. I mean, certainly, it is an A road. It is part of the strategic road network. And so I think in answer to your previous question about whether we could put a weight limit on it, it'd be very difficult for us to do that without declassifying the road, which, as you know from our previous correspondence, leads to lots of questions around rerouting of traffic around the city. I think the issue with the TRO consultation and the number of responses, we have had this chat before, I believe, around the fact that it's not done on numbers only. And in actual fact, and this is not, this is a technical point more than anything, the zebra crossings actually aren't subject to consultation in the same way and aren't subject to a TRO consultation. They are in fact a duty that the Highway Authority may deem necessary to implement on the basis of their understanding of need in that situation. That's not the approach that we've taken here. The approach we've taken here is to consult with people, and all of the evidence is put forward in this report that we have in a transparent way, so that Councillor Stagg and yourselves can make Councillor Stagg, with input from yourselves, can make a decision as to whether or not she feels it is appropriate for a zebra crossing to be implemented in what is actually quite a difficult road. It's very difficult to find a location that a zebra crossing would be appropriate in terms of all the guidance that we've got to adhere to, and some of the reasons for that has been put forward in the report. I mean, you're right that I think it was Councillor Heaney that mentioned about zebra crossings and ordinarily being seen as a positive. They are fundamentally designed to enable people to cross roads of any busyness, if you like, within the city. We know that crossing that particular road can be tricky. I know, having done that myself with my 2 young kids. I was living there when my son was in a buggy and my daughter was a very mobile 2-year-old, as I recall. And it is difficult, especially with that pedestrian refuge, they're down by Festing Road. It is quite small, and if you've got a buggy and a kid, it's quite hard to navigate. But we completely acknowledge the fact that it's not been universally popular. All of the correspondence is included within the report, and unfortunately that's what makes Councillor Stagg's job so difficult, that it isn't a straight numbers game. It is weighing up the different aspects. So just one last comment on why it was included within the TRO. It's because of the fact that we needed to change the parking regulations in order to fit in the zebra crossing, which is why it was put there. And as Kevin said, it was for that reason rather than any sort of conspiracy that it was put in. But yeah, I hope that kind of helps.
I sort of picked my way through that. I totally understand where you're coming from, Pam. After all, I've done the job as well in the past. The way the numbers are actually presented. The point that I'm making is that we've had over the past 2 or 3 years, you've had quite a few new residence parking zones come along. And Councillor Stagg, even though you've had some for, some against, and when it's with the TRO, there's always been that area of people that are perhaps supportive but not supportive of the times that zones go in. So therefore, my view is they're not agreeing with the TRO because they're disagreeing with the time. But you've always gone with the biggest number. And on this basis, the biggest number is the objection bit to this. That's the point that I'm making. The issue that I also have is that this crossing was put in because of the significant increase in traffic during 2020 when the seafront road was closed and this road was used as a diversion. And that seems to be the sole basis for the evidence to put in this zebra crossing. It's not taking into consideration traffic counts from 2019 or indeed 2021 in perhaps this year when we're generally back open and going forward. So to my part, you are wading very close to calling because there is insufficient and incorrect data when it comes to the zebra crossing, which leaves you effectively with a choice, because if this is called in, the whole thing is called in, which affects the residents' parking zones, which is not what the gentleman at the back wants to hear. My advice, for what it is worth, is to remove 2.5 and 2.6, which are the bits about the zebra crossing, and do that bit properly to make sure you get the right thing with the right data and allow the rest of the report to go through, because then the gentleman at the back gets what he wants from a residence parking zone point of view, and you look at this crossing in isolation. Because as you understand, if it goes through the call-in process, because I think it's got good grounds for it, the whole report stops and nothing can actually happen until that's heard. In that respect, and ironically, I'd be the one setting the meeting for that one as chairman of scrutiny. But so my advice, for what it's worth, because it's your decision, is that you look at the rest of it and say that's fine, but take out 2.5 and 2.6 and do the crossing part of it properly on its own, involving the ward councillors and having a specific consultation with the residents about the crossing and not conflating the two with residents parking and burying it there. That would be the advice that I would give to you.
I think you've got a good point there. I'm torn because obviously there have been problems with traffic down that road before the Seafront Road was closed. Anybody who's living there has said, particularly in summer, not winter, but summertime in particular, there are problems. So on a safety point of view, it is, I think, probably the only A road in Portsmouth that doesn't have a zebra crossing. And I know, having had a couple put in on Tangier Road in my ward, the difference it's made. because you don't have as many accidents. I don't know how many accidents there have been in this area. I think Kevin pointed out, I think quite clearly in the report, the reasons for the particular location chosen, because in other places, because you've got driveways, etc., it's not the best place. So combining the problems of other locations with that's a desired line.
I'm sorry, Lynn, but it looks at 3 different locations.
Yes.
In other words, it's suggesting that decision to put the crossing in has already been taken on the base data, and you're looking at 3 options.
I don't think that's the case.
I think you need to look at it from, is the data there over a period of time that supports the need for it before you actually look at the locations and decide. Because I don't doubt the reasoning behind the locations and the ultimate choice. There's probably done on sound engineering terms. It's how you've got to that point in the first place that is, in my view, questionable and puts you right in calling territory, in my opinion.
Yes, I think you've got some good points there. Councillor Heaney.
Yeah, sorry to come back in, but for me, sort of the one that needs clarification is paragraph 310, which talks about the assessment. Because if you read the paragraph, it talks about the assessment process, and then it says that the conclusion is that it comes under the normal data point that you would agree a crossing. Now, crossings are expensive and difficult, and we have arguments about that. It does say that it's not the only factor, but it is under. And there isn't any sense here of a longer term perspective on whether there have been issues with this area before, which doesn't seem clear. It talks about 2 particular days of service, but it talks about other factors. And I think it would have been helpful if that had been explained more clearly, whether there was a longer term analysis of accidents, because I know Michelle keeps accident statistics for roads, and that, you can go back quite some time on those. So I think that's where the point lies. And looking at the conclusion, it does suggest that although on one day it was very close, on another day it was very far away from the criteria you would need. And you could argue there's not enough here really to make a firm decision. If we had a longer time span and more information about that, it might make the decision. And again, I think the fact that local residents are opposed, I've just said it's quite unusual for a local resident to oppose a crossing, because most people are claiming they want them. So if that is the case, I think there has to be a question. I think Simon's got a valid. Well, yes. I mean, we can never entirely predict these things, but I'm saying that when you have resident objections, you've got to be really strong on your case for doing it, because looking at what we have in front of us, and all we can do is look what we've got in front of us, it's very much on the margins of whether you would agree it or not agree it. And
yes, I agree. Any comments from Kevin or?
Yeah, I've just been passed an email about the accidents. Tracy Shepherd in the network team has said, I confirm that...
Can you speak up, Kevin, because I can't...
Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to read. My eyesight's not... I can confirm that for the 3-year period, 1st of February 18 to 31st of January 21, there have been a total of 5 accidents recorded along the entire length of St Helens Parade from its junction with Eastney Esplanade to Eastern Parade. Of these accidents, 3 have been recorded as slight and 2 have been recorded as severe.
How do those numbers compare in the normal order of things for zebra crossings?
I'm not sure, because normally with the network management, but...
Councillor Stagg, I mean, if I can just interject here, I mean, actually, you are now getting information on the hoof through Messenger or whatever coming into Kevin, which is totally acceptable, but it just goes to reinforce my point that that information should have been in the report that you are considering, not coming after the event, which further reinforces the calling argument. If you're getting information being fed at this particular moment in time, and I come back to where I was, you need to remove 2.5 and 2.6 and address the rest of it.
Yes, I agree with you. So I will support the first 4 recommendations. Yes, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and take out 2.5 and 2.6.
2.7.
Well, that's obsolete then, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, no, the parking changes. No, that stays. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Stagg, if you're minded to do that, can we just have a couple of seconds just to review what that does to the other recommendations? Is that okay? Just to make sure that we don't have... Okay. Is that all right?
Yes, okay.
Could I just ask, I don't have the report with me. When you were mentioning the numbers, could you just state what they are? Because I just want to be clear, because as soon as I get home, I'm going to get lots of knocks on my door saying, what happened?
Are you okay now, Pam?
Yeah.
Right.
I think if you're minded to not have the crossing as part of the recommendations, then you'd need to take out 2.4, 5 and 6. If you're minded not to approve 2.4, 5, 2.5 and 2.6.
Because that's
Yes, because 2.4
creates facility for the crossing, so that's the one, yeah.
Fine, so it's 2.4. So we'll go with 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and the remainder we remove. Yes?
You can keep 2.7.
2.7, yes.
You can just keep 2.7.
Yes, I meant the remainder for the crossing.
Yeah.
I think that's sensible, Simon. Yeah. So, thank you, everybody. Nikki.
Sorry, can I just confirm that not approving 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, so you can't remove them now, can we?
Well, yeah.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, sorry, not approving those.
Okay. So I'm approving 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.7, but 2 point whatever, the others, I'm not. I'm going on page, yes. Okay. And that's it, I think, isn't it? Thank you, everybody. Sorry it's been a bit long. Thank you for your deputations. And your deputation was very, very erudite and
Thank you.
very impressive.
It was approved by my wife as well.
Oh, well, that's okay then. You've got the boss to okay.